This episode is brought to you by my Fertility Friday group programs. Make sure to head over to fertilityfriday.com/group program to find out more information about my January 2017 groups and also how to apply. Again, that's fertilityfriday.com/group program. This is the Fertility Friday podcast, episode number 105. Welcome to the 105th episode of the Fertility Friday podcast. Thank you for joining me today. I'm Lisa from fertilityfriday.com, and this is your source for information about the fertility awareness method and all things fertility. Before I jump into today's interview, I just wanted to take a moment and let you know about my new group programs that are coming out in January. I recently completed my 10-week group program that I had going on since August. We started in mid-August, and it was just an amazing experience. So I was working with a small group of women. We met every single week, and not only did we delve into fertility awareness charting and really get a handle on what all the mucus stuff means and how to sort it all out, we also really started to get a handle on what's happening, what are the underlying factors that are contributing to cycle irregularities. And so it was just my complete privilege and honor to work with such an amazing group of women and to see how they were supporting each other and there for each other. So let me tell you, there's just something really powerful about working in a group. And I know that firsthand because that's how I learned to chart as well. And so that's why I'm so passionate about creating that experience and opportunity for you. And I'd also like to share with you what one of my clients recently said about her experience.
I think you're natural at creating a very comfortable environment. Like, I do not feel it's like the opposite of talking. Well, in a good way, it's like the opposite of talking to like a doctor, because it's not this like stiff, like really, robotic kind of answer that you're getting from a textbook. It's obviously there are answers that you're getting that are founded on a lot of great knowledge and research and all that good stuff. It's still really solid information, but it's delivered in such a nice, refreshing way.
So make sure to head over to fertilityfriday.com/group program for more information. In this episode, you'll notice that I'm doing a bit of a different format today, and I'm really excited to introduce my Fertility Awareness Method reality series. I've had a number of clients and potential clients, and also people in general, kind of ask me what it is that I do. Most of you know that I am a fertility awareness educator, but few of you know what that really means and the in-depth way that I work with clients. And so I thought it would be a great idea to do a special episode where I actually share what I do on air. The clients that I'm working with in one way or another. So these may be one-on-one clients. These may be clients that are part of my group programs. But either way, they have volunteered to have a session on air with me. And so to give you a sense of exactly what it is I do and how I support my clients. And so I just want to be really clear that these are clients that I'm actually working with in some capacity. So all of the clients who are participating in the Fertility Awareness Method reality series are working with me, have several sessions with me, whether it's group sessions or one-on-one sessions. I am also privy to their health history, their charting information, and we have a professional working relationship. So I just want to be clear that this episode is not meant to be taken as medical advice or anything like that. I am not a doctor. I'm not a naturopath. I am a fertility awareness educator and also a holistic reproductive health practitioner interned through Justice HealthWorks. And so in conjunction with me, all of my clients are typically working with their own health practitioners. And so that includes medical doctors. It includes often naturopathic doctors, perhaps acupuncturist or any other type of health professional. And so I'm a member of my client's team. I'm not the only person that they're seeing with respect to their challenges regarding their menstrual cycles, their fertility, and any recommendations and suggestions that I provide are within the context of that professional relationship, as well as within the context of their kind of total health team. So I just want to be really clear that this episode is for informational purposes only, and any recommendations that I'm making or any suggestions are tailored to that person, tailored to that client, based on my understanding of their complete health picture that we've developed through our working relationship. And so I'll just jump in and give a quick introduction. So in this episode, I am actually interviewing Terry. She is one of my group program participants. So she participated in my first round of groups. So that was in August of 2016, and we went for 10 weeks. The point of recording this, we've actually been working together for over 2 months, and we've had lots of great experiences in the group. And so I just want to share with you how I work with clients. And so, a lot of the interview goes through some of the fertility awareness charting knowledge, but you'll notice that a lot of the things that we talk about are kind of with respect to menstrual cycle health and how these things are showing up on the chart, how to interpret them, and also suggestions of how to improve these things naturally. So I really hope you enjoy the first installment of my Fertility Awareness reality series. And in today's show, I'm really excited to welcome my guest, Terry, to the show. So she's part of the FAM reality series that I'm doing, and I'm really excited about it. And she wanted to be part of it. Terry is also a part of my Fertility Boost group program. So she's one of 6 women, and at the time of recording, we've had 8 sessions together. So we've been together for quite some time now. We're starting to get to know each other quite well. So welcome to the show, Terry.
Thank you for having me. I'm psyched.
Yeah, no, I'm really excited to have you. And so that the listeners get a little bit of background, maybe we could start by sharing a little bit about what your experience has been like in the group, what that process has been like for you.
Yeah, for me, the reason I got really excited about joining this group was just because, and I think a lot of, especially the women in the group, but a lot of women share the same kind of desire to know more about what the heck is going on, especially when things aren't working the way they're supposed to. So that, and also just, it's really empowering to know what's happening, even if you have perfectly healthy normal cycles, just kind of knowing more about why things happen the way they happen. And for me, especially, it was very important to find some sort of camaraderie because I have a whole bunch of, friends who are pregnant and like those who have had kids and those who are trying to have kids and stuff like that. So it's just nice to have a place to go when you've had kind of sometimes when you've had like a bummer week or something and you just kind of want to, have other people to commiserate with, but then also just to learn from each other's experiences and figure out that, you're absolutely not in this alone. And you always have that weekly check-in to kind of look forward to. I find myself definitely looking forward to them, which is nice.
Yeah, I do too. You can tell because I love the group of women that we have. And I think it's really interesting because a lot of the women are kind of in the same spot in terms of trying to conceive. One of the women is not. And I think that adds a bit of variety. And it also helps to talk about things that you're not really thinking about right now. So right now, absolutely, if you're trying to conceive, it's like the furthest thing from your mind that at some point you might need birth control again. So it's a good mix of women.
That's the other reason why I figured even, when you learn all this stuff about trying to conceive, and then obviously there's the whole other part about later, clearly I'm not really wanting to go on any other kind of artificial hormonal thing. So I think this is the only way I can foresee going, like after when I'm trying not to conceive.
No, for sure. And so I guess let's orient the listeners to you a little bit, to your history with hormonal contraceptive use. So the first question I typically ask actually when I'm doing a Skype consult or even when I'm working with a client is, when did you get your first period and what were your periods like before you went on hormonal contraceptives?
I wish I could remember exactly. It's kind of funny that I don't remember exactly, but I want to say it was probably like 13, 14. Does that sound about average? Like, I don't think I was any earlier or later than average. I don't know. But the periods then were pretty, I would say they're heavier than they are now. But again, like we've talked about before, Lisa, like it's kind of hard for me to tell like what is heavy, what isn't, since, I'm the only period I know. But I'd say they were a little bit heavier and probably lasted a little bit longer. And then I went on the pill from, I think about like 18 through like 10 years from then. So it was like 18 through 28 roughly years old. And then I got off the pill when I was trying to conceive the first time around. And so I think it's pretty important to mention that I do have one very beautiful, healthy son who's about 2 years old, actually just turned 2. And we've been trying now for, since December, and it's now October. So almost a year for baby number 2.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it struck me. So, of course, part of the process involves, detailed intake. And so as I was going through that and looking through just your history and everything, it struck me then that you do have the 10-year history of hormonal contraceptive use, and then followed pretty soon after by pregnancy. And then you were on hormonal contraceptives then right after your son was born.
Right. So the first time around when we were trying to get pregnant, it did take us, like my cycles never really evened out. It was kind of like the longer cycles, and I was not at all tracking. I wasn't even aware of any method like this. So yay, Lisa. So it was very like just frustrating because I felt like it was just taking forever for me to just get my period because I didn't entirely, so I was planning like 14 days in and then having, sex and then figuring that was doing the trick. But then I had this whole long, then additional month wait for my period. So I wasn't planning it right or doing it right, but somehow, I don't know how, but it worked. I got lucky. And then after my son was born, like you said, I went on the, I forget which pill it is when you're breastfeeding, but I went on that one. So I went on that for a little bit. And then when I stopped breastfeeding, when he was about 6 months, I went back on the regular pill. And then I took that until probably early December. And so I've been trying ever since. And it was kind of the thing where I was like, okay, well, we want to really start trying January, February. So given the issues I had last time, I'll get off a little earlier this time, but it didn't obviously make a difference. It's been taking longer now.
Well, yeah. And because we've been kind of together for 8 weeks. So as listeners will notice, we're not going to go through and do a big long intro. I want to check in with you about your understanding. But in the group, we've been talking a lot about the charting particulars. And I know you've been challenging yourself to use the Justice charting methodology and the observational routine. And you've been super keen on it, which is really great. But I do have, I have the one cycle that you're in the middle of.
I know. I don't have a ton of information yet.
Yeah. But I wanted to ask you, so I was looking at the previous chart that you sent me. So that was from some time ago.
Right. It's probably from a couple of cycles ago. I think the last cycle prior to this one I'm currently charting that we're looking at, I didn't really do a lot. I was a little frustrated, but
well, understandably. Well, and you mentioned that your cycles have kind of been averaging about 45 or 42 days.
Yeah.
So they've been a little on the longer end. And have you been, within the last couple cycles, looking at when your ovulation was?
What I was kind of basing a lot of my information on before was the little pea stick things. What do you call those?
The OPKs, ovulation predictors.
Yeah. And those, we've talked about before at my, the LH was just high almost all the time. So it didn't really help me too much. Sometimes I had the one where it shows you when they don't detect a surge, and then one where it's high LH and the other gives you peak. So they're kind of 3 levels. So I would get high LH for a long time. And then sometimes I get multiple peaks in a month. And I don't know. So it wasn't really working. So I've since thrown those away and I'm just charting using this method. But like I also mentioned before, I think I have a slight feeling that I might only be ovulating on one side. And I don't know how truthful, that was one of my questions too. I don't know if I'm jumping ahead, but I don't know how truthful it is where we actually do switch off left side, then right side for ovulation, as far as which ovary is doing the ovulating. I don't know if that's actually a proven fact or if that's a theory. I don't know if you want to talk about that now or later, but.
Well, I would say it's probably safe to say that this is tongue in cheek, but women aren't machines. And so some women may actually have that pattern. And others, it may not always be so consistent where it's one and then the other. The only real way to know, to be honest, would be to do an ultrasound around the time of ovulation to figure out which side the egg is coming out of. And I think we talked about this a little bit in the group, but some women do feel Mittelschmerz. I do typically feel it as well. So I've experienced it and I know what it's like. But at the same time, I experience it most of the time. But I don't necessarily experience it every single time. So I know that you had mentioned that.
That is specifically, it's not just ovulatory pain. It's when the egg is released that you feel it or no?
So it's not like a twinge, oh, I'm ovulating now. Sweet. It's typically more of, I suppose it could be, but we've talked a lot about just the process of ovulation. And so, as the follicles produce more estrogen, as you're gearing towards ovulation, the dominant follicle grows to be 20 times the size that it typically is. And it actually starts to physically push against the ovary. So it's like expanding and pushing. And so then your ovary would look quite swollen if you were to actually get an ultrasound and look at it. And then at some point it does burst open. So I think that you're not necessarily only feeling that moment of ovulation. You may also, because for like my experience of the sensation, and I think a lot of women's experience too, is kind of like a dull throbbing type of sensation.
For like
several hours.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, so then I've had that, but only on my left side.
Yeah. So that, I mean, if you're concerned about that and if you were to want to really look into that, it would be a little bit challenging, I suppose. But so I remember you saying that you felt the dull pain on the one side. And then would you say not feel anything the following month, or would you?
Right. So that's this cycle we're in right now. I haven't felt anything and I'm on day 34.
Okay.
So I'm thinking, originally I was like, oh, that must mean I'm not ovulating on my right side, the side that I don't feel pain on. But then when I was talking to a couple of people, they're like, or you could only be ovulating on your right side and the left side is having issues, and like not able to release or something. Because I guess another very important thing to mention to whoever's listening would be that I did go to an endocrinologist and they did diagnose me with polycystic ovarian syndrome. Is that PCOS?
Yeah.
So that means that I do have these like cysts in my ovaries, which have not been able to get out. Like now I'm really excited to chart. Excited to chart next cycle because I'm thinking I might actually be ovulating on that side and I'll actually see like the old temperature spike and all that fun stuff.
Yeah. Well, and I think the interesting thing too is at this point you have one full, chart. And so it's hard to say until you've had, say, 3 full charts where you've had ovulation in each cycle and you make a note of, okay, I felt the dull pain on the right side. So we'd have more information than if you felt it, say, only on the right side for 3 months in a row.
Right. I definitely have had it 2 cycles in a row on the left side.
Or sorry, I meant the left side.
That's fine. But
I was trying to give your right side.
I don't think I've ever felt anything on my right.
Okay. Well, and if that's the case, then that would warrant, like if you were concerned about that, then you could certainly, go to your doctor or if you have a fertility specialist and actually request an ultrasound around ovulation to see if they're able to detect anything else. I think the one thing to note is that even if you were only ovulating on one side, that doesn't necessarily mean that you can't conceive. And that may have absolutely nothing to do with the fact that you haven't been able to.
Right.
Because there could be other factors at play. I mean, there's so many topics that we could talk about today. But there's a few things. So one of the things, I'm looking at your chart right now. So I have it up. Do you want me to share the screen?
Go for it.
Okay.
Oh, I have it kind of here too, but it's up to you.
All right. Yeah, sorry, the listeners won't be able to see the chart, but but what I see on your chart then, because I know in our last session you were kind of trying to figure out if there was ovulation there or not. So what I see, and so for listeners, I guess I just have to describe it, but the temperature pattern is kind of erratic. Like it's not really showing me a clear thermal shift. So at this point, I think in our last session, I said, you were asking, have I ovulated? Do you see a clear thermal shift? And I said, to be announced. And so you mentioned that today.
Yeah, I don't think I did, but
yeah. And so,
because I'm not, it's supposed to go up higher than the past 6 readings for 3 days straight.
That's right.
Yeah. And that obviously didn't happen. But the one thing I did want to mention is on day like 21, that's the first day I started actually leaving the thermometer in my mouth for like, maybe not quite 10 minutes, to be honest, at least before hitting the button and making sure that it's like an actual good reading. So you can tell it kind of evens out there. But do people's charts usually look that erratic or no?
In terms of temperature?
Yeah, like I always thought it would be a little bit more even.
I would say that what I'm seeing here is not uncommon because your temperature isn't the same every day. And also keeping in mind that you do have a 2-year-old. And so...
Exactly. I was going to say, that's mainly the reason. Like if he makes noise, I'm up.
Yeah. And so what and you know this, what I always suggest is just to make note of anything. If you, just like you mentioned, you were kind of up early last night, not by choice. Right. And so I would just kind of, I always recommend to take the temperature regardless, just, take it,
and
make a note of it. And then if it's super erratic and out there and you know why, then you just, if you were charting on a piece of paper, you'd circle it, but you just mark it as a normal temperature. But yeah, I did want to talk to you a little bit about the PCOS diagnosis. So you mentioned in the intake form then that you were diagnosed with PCOS. I have irregular cycles, and because they saw cysts on the ovaries.
Right.
Did they do any additional testing, or was that what you had sent me with regards to some of the hormone levels, TSH?
I think I sent you all the testing I had done. Okay. I'm pretty sure. It's almost like 5 different check boxes. And if you like to diagnose you with PCOS, and if you check off at least 2 of them, then that means you have it. It's like when people have like stomach issues, they just call it like IBS. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I think it's kind of one of those, like, it's an all-inclusive type thing when they're not really sure. But the thing so like, I don't have any like the excess hair growth or like issues with weight and stuff like that, but there are a lot of other like symptoms I don't have. But since there are legitimate like cysts in the ovaries and I have not very I have irregular cycles, then they were like, okay, that's what you have. So, I mean, obviously with them, it's very black and white, but I don't know.
Did they offer you any suggestions or what?
Yeah, I have like a prescription that's been waiting for me for like 3 months at CVS, which I haven't gotten. So I figured I'd give this a good shot. And then I said, like, we'll reassess at a year and see where we're at. Because the thing I'm running into, and I know like I'm 31, so I know I'm not too old by any stretch, but in my head, I've always like pictured a family of like 3 little kids. And so I have one, thank God. And I just kind of always figured or like wanted to have my family like all here and good and happy by the time I was like, I don't want to mess with like the 35-year-old barrier, which I know is plenty of people, have kids after 35 and it's like totally fine and they're completely healthy and stuff like that. I just, for some reason for me, it's kind of like I would be like a little bit of a nervous wreck and it would give me kind of second thought about even having a 3rd child. So basically I know I have plenty of time, but I'm trying to like
shortcut the process
pop
so that
kids out and be done.
Yes.
Anyway.
Well, in terms of the PCOS diagnosis, so depending on the practitioner that you go to, it's also been referred to, say, as androgen excess, so excessive, say, testosterone, and also cardiometabolic syndrome. And so one of the characteristics then of PCOS would be it's like your decreased insulin insensitivity, so an insensitivity to insulin. Right. And so one of the things that stood out to me, and I'm going to smile a little bit, and you will smile a little bit too, was your food journal.
Oh, God.
You're like, here it comes.
The one test they told me to do, which I never ended up going back for, was that like glucose, whatever, the like pre-diabetes or whatever, the insulin test. I forget what they call it, but I never
make you drink sugar water or whatever.
Right, which is what I did when I was pregnant. It was fun.
Yeah. I think I don't even know how I got out of that one, but yeah.
You got out of it?
I didn't want to drink the syrup. Yeah, that's probably not a good thing, but I digress. You completed one day, and I had kind of suggested that you do a day that's typical of what it's usually like when you eat. And so one of the things, that strikes me, of course, and so given the history, so just a little mini history lesson then of hormonal contraceptives. They have a ton of different effects on the body. So in terms of your cycle, one of the things that once you started kind of doing the external checks, so with the Justice method, external wiping, you're noticing a lot of dry days and not a whole lot of mucus. And so one of the impacts that the hormonal contraceptive can have on the body is that it can actually change the cervical crypt. So I think we talked about this a little bit, where the longer you're on it. So one of the reasons that it works so well at preventing pregnancy is because it causes your cervix to create what's called G-type mucus. All of the mucus that we talk about in our group is E-type. It's the type that you can see. And so when we talk about peak mucus and non-peak mucus, when you're on hormonal contraceptives, in order for them to work, then they have to prevent that type of mucus from being produced, or else the sperm would be able to hang out and swim around. So then what happens is that you kind of end up with more G crypts, like more crypts in the cervix that are producing that mucus that you can't see. So the mucus that's just plugging up your cervix. So I'm just talking a little bit about that because it's important to be aware that that could be a factor in the limited mucus production, but that doesn't mean that that's a permanent thing because the cervix does have the capacity to heal. Another aspect of it, and I am getting to a point here, but another aspect of kind of having that history of hormonal contraceptive use, and especially, right after coming off of hormonal, sort of right after coming off of it, getting pregnant again, these are two things that drain nutrients from your body. So the hormonal contraceptive depletes certain nutrients, like for example, zinc, B vitamins, folate in particular.
Right, we talked about that in the group, I remember.
And then nothing sucks nutrients from your body like a baby. And so one of the things that I see, in your chart, especially with kind of the longer cycles, limited mucus production, one of the things that we're going to want to focus on is to really replenish those nutrients in your body.
Okay. So when you look at my chart, you think it's like, I don't have quite as much mucus as I should.
Well, this chart in particular, but it's hard to say because this is the only chart that I'm looking at. And also we haven't in this chart, we have not seen you approach ovulation yet. So we're kind of seeing, So
got it.
So yeah.
I've never had like an experience where I'm like, I think like maybe, I don't know, like I don't ever think I have like a ton of mucus because I feel like I would have noticed by now. Like, I feel like even just in like, just the fact that I don't know what lubricative like feels like, I feel like that in and of itself, like even since we've been doing this for the past, you know what I mean? Like that's a couple of cycles I've been through.
And you don't have like one of those experiences that you remember, like there was that one day that I was super wet.
So.
And I didn't know why.
There may have been, but I don't, now that I'm paying attention, I'll know more, but anyway, go ahead.
So the first thing that stands out to me then when I take a look at your diet diary, the very first thing is like, where's the food, Terry?
No, and you know what? That might not have been a very accurate. Like the problem is, okay, I work at the farm, like I was telling you about, and so there's like tons of beautiful like vegetables and fruit and all that stuff, but there's a bakery and all you smell is cookies. I'm sorry. Oh my goodness. All you can smell is cookies. So I am like such a cookie freak. Like it's bad. So I definitely eat way more sweets than I should. And then I'm like, why am I not hungry? But no, I definitely snack more than I should. So that may not be very accurate, but probably whatever I left out was not of huge nutritional value.
Okay.
So continue.
Well, so if we're looking at something like PCOS or call it cardiometabolic syndrome or whatever we're calling it, one of the ways to address it without drugs, or at least it's kind of like covering the basis. We want to try to stabilize your blood sugar as much as possible. And what that means is that kind of the first step to doing that would be to, at each meal. So why don't you tell me, typically, what do you eat for breakfast?
I've been doing like an egg and a couple pieces of toast and sometimes some spinach in there. And I know that doesn't sound like a lot of calories because my husband and I have been trying to like kind of count calories a bit just to try to like lose weight a bit. But I find that like if I eat a big breakfast and I use up a lot of like my allotted calories of the day, like I'm bummed out later because I'm like, oh, I want this and that and I can't have it. So if I have a small breakfast, then I'm able to eat more like later in the day. So that's my reasoning for having a small breakfast. But
okay. And then do you feel satisfied? Because
for a little while.
Like how long is a little
like
while?
Until like, so I probably eat breakfast at like 6:30 or 7, and then I'm probably good until like 9:30.
Okay.
Is that good?
That's fair. It's fair. So when it comes to food and everything, one of the resources that I would start, if you're into some reading. So my suggestions might be a little bit frustrating because what I want you to kind of think about is that just kind of painting the picture of replenishing your body's nutrients. So any woman who's been on hormonal contraceptives for a long time and any woman who has given birth to a child within the last couple of years is probably a little low on the nutrients that she needs. And so instead of focusing on calories, I would encourage you to try to focus on foods that are going to give your body the tools and the nutrition and the building blocks for your next healthy baby.
Yep.
And yeah, so, and it's a shift. It's definitely different than the way we all think of food typically. I know for me, for years, I thought of it like as fuel, and it was like, I'm hungry. Let's just like fill the tank with whatever,
No,
so that I'm not hungry, because it's annoying to be hungry.
Especially when you have kids, it's like, all right, what's the fastest option? Because he's screaming at me.
Yeah, I know, right? Like you don't have time to, put it all together.
It's like I think that often, actually, this is a perfect example. And I'm thinking I should start eating more like this anyway. Like I give my son, I have one of those little compartmentalized like trays. So I'll have like his whatever, like meat portion or whatever. And then I'll have a little bit of fruit and like some nuts or something, you know what I mean? So it's like a nicely balanced, like portioned out meal. And I'm like, why do I just eat like whatever he doesn't eat, or like peanut butter and jelly? Like, I don't, you know what I mean? Like I give him like the best stuff, and I'm like, all right, what's left for me? But
yeah. Well, and it's definitely not easy. It's just not. So as a mom, so I can completely relate, and I understand, and it's not like I eat 100% amazing all the time.
Right.
That is not my life. I do my best. But I guess one of the first places to start is then when you're putting together meals for yourself, or even if you're just grabbing something on the go, try to think about, okay, so in each meal, you want to have your macronutrients. Like you want to have some sort of protein, some sort of fat, and some sort of carbohydrate. And you kind of want to keep that in the back of your mind throughout the day. And so just like the example you just gave, the great food that you feed to your son, but not yourself, but giving him a handful of nuts with a fruit or something like that, and eating them together, and just keeping that in mind. And it's not easy to give up the cookies and the sugar. But one of the reasons you could be craving sugar too is if you're hungry.
Yeah. I think I have an unhealthy addiction to chocolate. And like, if I'm stressed out, I notice I'm like, I need a cookie. And I'm like, no, you don't need a cookie. You know what I mean? So it's definitely just an emotional attachment. I honestly think that's all it is, but I don't know.
And you live on a farm. So how do you feel about organ meats and like all that stuff?
About what? Sorry.
Organ meats, liver.
I live on a vegetable farm.
Right. So we are not an animal farm.
You mean like liver and stuff like that?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't feel great about it, but it's not my first choice, or my second or third choice. But
No, I totally understand. The reason I always keep bringing up liver, so all my listeners and you and everyone in the group is going to be like, why the heck does this chick keep talking about liver? But the nutrients that your body needs then, that are really important to, say, replenish what may have been depleted when you were on the birth control pill, they're nutrients like B vitamins, so B6, B12, folate, zinc, magnesium. There's like, the list goes on and on and on. And so I recognize that most people are not keen on eating it. And you can certainly supplement. I know you had so you're taking your prenatals.
Yeah. And a like woman's support, I don't know, that was suggested to me. Hormonal balancing or whatever.
Yeah. So we want to start by supporting your body's hormone production. We want to do that by trying to incorporate more nutrient-dense foods into the diet, trying to get some healthy fats to help support your hormone production. Vitamin A is something that you can get from food, so like liver organ meats or cod liver oil. And if you're not too keen on eating liver, you can eating the liver. You can actually buy like grass-fed desiccated liver capsules. You can take it like a vitamin instead, and that can be one of the things that you can do to improve the nutrient density.
Okay.
It's a tall order though. So the one thing I guess that I want to focus on in terms of diet is the blood sugar balance, like we talked about. So maybe you could give me a sense of how much fat you typically get, what type of oils you typically cook with, or if you are able to cook because it's so super busy with your 2-year-old. Yeah,
we cook almost exclusively with everything I can with butter, just plain old butter, right. Which is new because I grew up in a household that was like, butter will kill you. Ham. So, and my mom still has that like fake butter. Oh, I don't know.
Oh yeah, the plastic.
But luckily, I married a guy who is into like whole milk and butter, and so we always use butter, and then like, like olive oil when I feel like cooking with olive oil. But honestly, those two really, like, my husband made like Mongolian beef last night and used vegetable oil because I don't know if vegetable oil is fine, but I know canola oil is kind of like meh, so we don't cook with that unless it's like baking and you need some for like a recipe. So honestly, it's mostly butter to cook with.
Yeah, that's definitely good. Vegetable oils don't do anything good for when they're heated, especially, don't do anything good for your hormones.
Okay.
So, I mean, that's definitely a good sign. And the only thing really that I don't like to kind of start it off with like, and cut out everything you love. Never have a cookie again.
But this is fine. I need suggestions.
Yeah. But I guess the first suggestion would be to start paying attention to your sugar intake. So I would focus on the balancing of the meals. So whatever you can incorporate, like for example, avocados are a good thing to incorporate if they're in season and if they're available. So, having your sandwich in the morning paired with an avocado can be super helpful to balance out the protein, fat, and sugar. And because what the basic kind of food lesson of how your body deals with the sugar is that if you eat bread or a cookie or a banana, like you can't really compare them all together, but essentially those are all fall under the carbohydrate family. And so when you eat those, they turn into simple sugars and they kind of go into your bloodstream, and then your body has to release a bunch of insulin to keep your blood sugar levels stable. So then your pancreas is squirting out all this insulin just to kind of keep you stable. But when you eat a meal that's more balanced and you have protein and fat together with carbohydrates, then it actually slows how quickly the blood sugar levels rise in your bloodstream, and therefore you don't have the same like blood sugar spike. And then And so if you can start to think about that and start to kind of pay attention to not the calories that you're putting in your body, but the structure of the meals, then it can help you to kind of get a sense, because that is like the first step, balancing the blood sugar that can help to balance your hormones. And that in of itself can make your cycles cooperate better. Okay. Yeah.
Yep. Because I know it's not balanced now. Like I know without a doubt.
Yeah. So I'll stop flogging you with the diet
now.
No,
it's fine. No.
That's good. And so I want to ask how you're sleeping. So what's that like?
It's good. I mean, it's so hard to compare like what good sleep is if this is the only sleep I've ever known, you know what I mean? But I think it's been pretty good. I obviously like sometimes since my son is 2, I turned off the monitor at this point because it's like, he's fine. If he coughs in the night, he's fine. But sometimes he does like wake up, or if he does cough, like I still hear it because it's not the hugest house in the world. So sometimes I wake up for that. A lot of times I like almost always have to wake up in the middle of the night to pee. But other than that, I sleep pretty well. I do know that it's rare that, you know what, maybe this means I don't sleep very well. It's rare that I fall asleep and then I wake up the next morning being like, oh my gosh, I like don't remember waking up at all last night, because a lot of times like when I'm rolling over at night, I'll be like consciously like doing it. You know what I mean? Like I'll know. So I think that means I'm probably awake, but I don't know what's normal really.
Well, I think it's safe to say that the concept of sleep, like it's like having children teaches you all this stuff about sleep, as you know, but the concept of sleeping through the night, I think we all have sleep cycles. And so to some degree, you kind of wake up in between those. Right. So do you typically wake up feeling rested?
Yeah.
Okay. And then you typically go to bed early, I think.
I usually I think 10:30 is usually like the latest I really go to bed.
Okay.
11 would be like really the latest. But like I usually try to, I aim for like 10:30. Okay. So sometimes it is more like 11, but it's not, I try not to make it too often.
Okay. And then your sleep, I know we talked about this in the group, but your sleep environment, is it dark? What's that like?
Yeah, it's dark. Actually, last night after we had that talk, I was like, can I see my hand from a bed? And I could, because I keep a light on in the hallway just in case I have to get up for my son, but I don't know why I need to. I think I just like it on, but whatever. But it's very dark for sure. Yeah, but it's not pitch black.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's something to put on your radar and to just to know that that can help to support your hormone production if it is pitch. But I recognize that may or may not be possible. But if it is possible for the pitch when you're sleeping, that can help.
Wouldn't hurt to try it out, right?
Yeah, because it's free and super effective for a lot of women. So you can't discount the power of the dark. So not for every woman, but for some women, that is enough to regulate their periods.
Okay.
So it's a thing, and that's why I always talk about it. The other thing I want to ask you too, what are your energy levels like?
Ugh. It's hard for me to say. I would say that I don't have the energy I wish I had. But again, like I'm running a business and I have a 2-year-old. So I think that might be like the reason or the reasons. But I think like a lot of times in the morning, for example, I'll wake up and if I'm with my son for the day, like he'll be playing on the floor with his toys and I'll like sit down on the floor and be like, I just want to like fall back to sleep and just like lay back down. And this is after like having showered and like gotten ready for the day. Now, if I was at work, I wouldn't really be thinking about how tired I am because I'm not as like vegged out as I am if I'm at home. You know what I mean? So I don't know. Like a lot of times I'm like, oh, like I feel like I'm already exhausted at the beginning of the day, like when I'm with my son. Mm-hmm. I think it's just because I'm like, okay, like, because it's a lot of work, you know?
Yeah.
But I mean, I love it, but you know, I don't know if that means that I think I would like a little bit more energy for sure is the short answer to the long.
Yeah. Well,
rambling afraid to escape.
No, for sure. And I think that focusing on like a breakfast that's high, like, you know what I mean? Like doing that as a foundation could be helpful. And we talked about this a little bit in the group, but your thyroid. So in the intake form, you checked off that you had like a panel done with like T4 and T3. Your cycles are kind of showing this pattern of delayed ovulation. Mm-hmm. That indicates that your body's kind of struggling to produce the estrogen levels it needs to ovulate. So, I mean, I guess the suggestion there would be that you would want to rule out any type of thyroid dysfunction. Like you'd want to figure that out and just to know if it's a thing for you or not. And the way to do that would be to see if your doctor is willing to do a full thyroid panel. And so I guess one of the thoughts to leave you with is that it can be really overwhelming. As you can tell, there's a lot of things that you can focus on. And so the best thing to do is to start small. So just to pick the thing to focus on. So even if it's just, okay, I'm going to grab myself a B complex, you know, this week, and I'm going to start there. So not trying to do the whole kit and caboodle, because it is a process and it does take a bit of time. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So as far as like a plan goes, I'm going to focus on the nutrition. I'm going to look into the new prenatal and the different like vitamins and stuff that you mentioned. And then try to make my room as dark as possible at night. And that's about it.
And that's probably enough for one day. Yeah.
Into my body, which makes sense. I mean, that's where it all starts.
Yeah. All right. Well, we didn't talk about a whole lot of charting stuff. So the last minute charting questions that you want to talk about today.
No, I think I'm good. I think I'm I'll have a much better idea once I'm like charting for a few cycles, because I'm like half the time I'm like, is this actually smooth? Because sometimes like if I were to just like quick wipe, like I might not feel anything. But if I'm able to like, not to be gross, but to like kind of like dig around and wipe, you know,
yeah,
then I'm like, I have the sensation. Gross. But I find that most of the time I'm like, just please have mucus. So I'm like, it's bad. But so that's mostly when I'm getting any kind of sensation. So I really don't think that my mucus is that plentiful, if you will.
Yeah. Well, and when
you diet, you think will change that, or is there anything in particular that I should focus on in order to give myself more mucus?
Well, the very first place to start is the B complex, which is necessary to support your cervical health and to support mucus production. There's specific, so B6 actually is associated with lengthening the luteal phase, and it's also associated with cervical mucus production. So that's the very first place kind of to start.
Awesome.
So
thank you, Lisa.
You're welcome. Do you have any parting words for all the listeners that were able to listen into this very private conversation that we're having very publicly?
Well, I hope it was helpful. I don't know. I know this has been super, super helpful for me. And even if I don't understand everything right off the bat, I know it's very much a learning curve. which is why it's so nice to have this supportive way of learning this. And also I found that too, like my first cycle when we were doing our meetings, I was like, nah, like I'll really dig into it when I'm in my next full cycle, because I was kind of mid-cycle when we started. But you just need to dive right in and make sure you're like fully committing to it, because if you're not, then what's the point? You know what I mean? Like if you're trying to figure out if this is actually going to work for you long-term, then you have to, like you were saying in our last meeting, really have to actually, you have to do the work. Otherwise, like, it's obviously not going to work if you're not willing to like at least try it. Yeah. So I'm like really into it for this cycle. And you kind of like, at first I was like, oh, this taking my temperature thing every morning stinks. But then I started getting excited to like see what it was. Like, I can't wait to like chart my stupid point on the graph. It gets better once you really delve in, and it gets a lot less confusing the more you just do it. Cause then it becomes more of like this is just what I do now. You know what I mean? It's not this daunting task of like charting all these confusing things. And I just make notes as I go. And then at one point, like every 2-3 days, I sit down and I like actually try to figure out what the, like which sticker color and all the different like codes and stuff to use. But if I just like write down kind of what I'm feeling, it helps like as I go throughout my day, because otherwise I wouldn't know what had happened.
Yeah. But yeah, so I
would just say to anybody who's listening, who's like thinking about doing it, just try it. I wish I had started a little bit earlier, so that since I have such long cycles, it's like, oh man, now I have to wait another 40 days to get this information again. You know what I mean?
Yes, totally. All right. Well, thank you so much, Terry. It was so great to have you on the show and to be able to do this call with you. So
yeah, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, please share it with a friend. You'll find the show notes page for today's episode at fertilityfriday.com/105. I really hope you enjoyed my interview with Terry. It was such an honor to be able to work with her in the group program. She's so funny, and she brings so much joy and laughter to the group. And also, she's super committed to the process. Like, she was on board. She jumped on and started charting everything and really just put herself out there and absorbed all of the information that we shared with each other and learned together. So it was just a joy to be able to work with her, and also a lot of fun to be able to do a session on air. And so I hope that you enjoyed the session. I hope that it was really illuminating to you. And, again, I just want to reiterate that, of course, this session, this type of podcast is something new that I'm trying. I thought that it would be really beneficial for the audience to hear more about what I do and the process that I go through with women. I get a lot of questions, especially in my Facebook group. So if you haven't joined my Facebook group and you want to chat more about this episode, make sure to head over to fertilityfriday.com/community to be directed there. But in my group, I get a lot of women who ask specific questions about what to do, what's happening with my chart, and should I take this supplement? And the thing about that situation, and that I hope that the Fertility Awareness Reality Series will kind of get at, is that a woman's chart is within the context of her health history, within the context of her diet, her lifestyle, her stressors, and so many different factors that when a person kind of asks a question that would seem like it's simple, like, what's going on this day of my chart, I can only respond to a question like that with 20 questions. So what I love in terms of my client work is that I have the information as well as the time that I need. So we spend a lot of time focusing on how the whole charting thing works, really getting you solid in your understanding with mucus so that you aren't confused every day as to what's going on and whether or not you're fertile. What I really love about the work that I do with clients as well is that my clients end up feeling like they know exactly what's happening in terms of whether they're fertile or not. So there's no gray area. It's never this like, I don't know if I'm fertile or not. I don't know what's going on with my mucus. It's really clear. Like, it's like black and white, very night and day. You're either fertile or you're not. And I love helping clients to get to that place. So that's a huge part of the focus. And another part of the focus then, of course, is trying to get down and figure out what could be causing any cycle irregularities. And, to date in my client work, I haven't seen any charts that are just like super perfect and all parameters wonderful. And I mean, there's different reasons for that. One of them could just be that when a woman's chart looks like that, it's a lot easier for her to figure everything out. If a woman's chart fits into that kind of description of what you see in taking charge of your fertility, if it fits into what you see in the book, then it's pretty easy. And so maybe those women just aren't reaching out to me. but that also makes up a big part of my one-on-one work when I work with clients. And so it's a lot of fun to be able to have that baseline of where you're starting from, and then also to see how cycles change and how a woman's cycle responds to any changes that we incorporate together. So I hope that you enjoyed this interview. And if you've been enjoying the podcast, please look for it on iTunes and leave a 5-star review. Every time I check my reviews, and I do read all of the reviews, honestly, you guys are the best. There's just so many wonderful reviews on there, and it really does make a difference. It helps more women to find the show. And when you do leave reviews and you do share the show with your friends and you kind of help me to get the word out there, it does make a difference. And I can actually see that in terms of the download numbers. And I can see that in terms of, how many people are reaching out to me, how many people are jumping in the Facebook group. And so I really appreciate all of you for sharing the podcast. And so if the podcast has helped you in any way, then I would just love it. That's the biggest compliment you could give me. I would love it if you could share and keep getting the word out. And if you have an idea for a podcast episode or a guest suggestion, make sure to send me an email at info@fertilityfriday.com. And I just want to thank you once again for spending some time with me today, for taking me for a walk or taking me on your drive to work or whatever it is that you're doing today. I really appreciate that. And as always, until next time, be well and happy charting.